Welcome everybody to Sales Trainer Online, the listed sell tour online. And here again is just as a constant reminder, the assumption that we're working on here is that you do have a degree of traction, that you've broken the market somewhat, you are securing listings. I don't care if it's one, I don't care if it's 10. And you have in mind leverage, traction, moving from one listing to two to four, and so on. Today's session, I'll just go around the traps with some of the other products that we have at different and varying degrees. Of course, many of you might be interested in joining us or jumping on board with some of these others. Always keen to let you know where we're at. Again, welcome to all of our Sales Trainer Mentor candidates. This is where we are engaging with you on a one-on-one basis, setting up your weeks, but fundamentally getting that listing presentation in order. And don't we have lots in store for that today? So this is today's session, what are we up to now? Session 8, so T2, T being the second phase of traction, T for traction, session 8, and we're into listing as it relates to prosperity. So we're getting prepared to go into those listing presentations. And there's a huge theme on this month, notwithstanding the fact that those of you that are on the east coast of Australia, if you want to join us from next week, we do have some training that we're set up for our friends over in New Zealand, predominantly the McDowell group over there. But that training will start at 7 a.m. and you might wonder how on earth I'm going to get myself to that. Well, I will drag myself kicking and screaming. You can wait or you can join in on top. So you can do this as well, but you can wait because I'm getting something together, not least of which is for some of our Sydney offices. And so the east coast of Australia will be able to enjoy that training. That'll be around this, but most likely on a Wednesday that we'll be putting that together. And those sessions might only run once a month, once every 2 weeks, but they will be quite protracted and focused entirely on the listing presentation. So first of all, with property careers, and those that joined us last week here on the List and Sell Tour would know that I banged on about leverage, in particular around the sales inquiry log, or SEL. And just a reminder, we call it the sales inquiry log because in all of that sales inquiry that you're getting, and this encompasses everything from attendees to your welcome homes or open homes, as some of you might call them, inquiries that are coming in or off your internet portals that you might be putting out there, and of course, those that might be coming off signage. I think the days of walk-in are well and truly behind us, but any form of sales inquiry that we mistakenly really only give the handle of buyer to. And we showed last week, and this is, I echoed those sentiments again yesterday inside of property careers with the PCM program, because there's a lot of sales associates that are directly supporting salespeople, notwithstanding that there are sales professionals that are sort of breaking into the market. So they're grabbing hold of the training available for sales associates and utilizing that to get their prospecting up. And when I say get prospecting up, the goal with prospecting hasn't changed. It is always about prospect flow. That's what we're looking for. We want to get to a stage where we're getting plenty of that coming into play, but I'll mention more of that as we go. And I've seen some extraordinary success from, notwithstanding, for one example, Courtney Fern, who's in assistance to Lincoln Tatnall up there in Brisbane. And Courtney is focused exclusively this month on sales inquiry. And we just move through this, just change it. I'm not going to dwell on this, just so that you understand how it works, because I did talk about this last week, focusing very, very, very deliberately on qualification first. So when that inquiry comes in, working out whether it's just a buyer or also a seller or sometimes both, and then moving to identify the motive, their reason for selling, and of course, identifying where they're currently at. So once you actually have someone who says, and it doesn't matter whether they say everything from, well, we're not looking at putting ours on the market until we find something to buy, all the way through to we're doing it a little bit later, you just move into with where are you moving from? Once you get some information around that, you can even look at the inquiry and say, oh, hang on, were you inquiring on this one to compare it with your own? Or you were looking at this to buy? Because that next question is, where are you moving to? From the motive, we're having loads of traction with this now, pardon the pun. And we're moving into giving advice. So we look in those opportunities when we're talking about the motive to get that advice or look for to land those advice questions. For example, well, hang on, what happens if you do find something? Doesn't that now mean that you're under some sort of emotional duress, given that you've got to get your property on the market to get it sold? In some ways, you're at a disadvantage, especially if there are other buyers that are at the ready and they can perform almost straight away. So all of those then lead to you giving advice. And the key is, and the words that came out last week, and I want you to hang on to these, is in your prospecting, especially in and around lockdown, look to create the relationship around discussing the motive. And then we're looking to create a listing presentation, not via solicitation, but more via invitation. So then we start to level the products, and what we want to create, for want of a better way of saying it, is lots of passive communication, passive contact. This is not necessarily having to call them up all the time and badger them, but sending out the property seller's research guide or some sort of pre-listing kit, getting them on your SMS router. You can check this out on listandsell.com.au. If you go into our sales trainer, into aids, and you will see communicating your results through SMSs and the templates that are there, building your accolades. Isn't this fascinating? We've got, especially in our real estate rock stars, which I'm just about to talk about in a moment, we've got all of them heavily focused on building case studies, on building recommendations from their past clients, and then pushing these out in the prospecting vein and certainly at the listing presentation. And this is saving countless man hours. It's almost an instant agreement to whatever they're trying to sell, especially at the listing presentation, if you're trying to substantiate some valid point, which I'm going to talk about in just a second as it relates to fees, marketing expenses, and other charges, and getting those things in place. The accolades are being built up, two-view platform being sent out, because in lieu of what's going on in and around getting properties to market at the moment, some of the Victorian is quite draconian. You can utilize the two-view platform to be communicating back with buyers and sellers. And if you can establish this with your prospective seller, incumbent seller, or listing that's coming on, you can get things going, and this could be the catalyst to bring them on board. Your market roundup, of course, but importantly, your buyers, and discussing that. So we've made this very strong. We've had, and just back to what's happening with Courtney, between her and Lincoln, they have a goal set of a listing presentation every day. And as of this morning, I checked in yesterday, and again, I know that one's already been appointed for today. They have not missed a beat. So we are officially on the 10th of the month. They've had 10 listing presentations, and they are sailing smoothly toward at least 15 to maybe somewhere around 20 listings that they should be able to secure, and everything's going to look like rosy going forward with that, notwithstanding the fact that Coronis, that agency, has just moved into their rebranding. So that's been fantastic as well. Also, we've had, so there's been others that are out there. Sophie, Sophie 208, who works with Justin Hicks, and she supports directly his same guys. We've got them focused, all salespeople in his office, on double-figure listings this month. we've driven all of our energy directly to the SEL, the sales inquiry log. And Justin's reported, I think they're on 6 listings between 2 of them. And that's as of not yesterday, but the day before. So that's 2 days ago. And those listings are pouring in. So do not be telling me that they're not there. This is the simple analogy. If you look at the sales inquiry and look at the sheer volume of that that's coming in, and I know lots of those calls are repeated, but if you look at it on a case-by-case study, on a listing-by-listing, so you know where that listing's located, if that sits in your service area, and you get through and you qualify those people, and I say this very, very sincerely, don't focus too heavily on trying to get to that presentation. Don't be caught up in that stupid scenario where you're saying, can I come down and give you an idea on price? Push, 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 because this is creating distaste anyway, and it's offering very little of value. And if you're offering very little of value, you're going to get yourself in a bit of strife with what I'm about to talk about again today. So that's been fantastic. That's all going off beautifully. And we're seeing, as I just said, our real estate sales associates killing it with the prospecting by just focusing on that sales inquiry log. We move into the real estate rock stars. They're all this month focused on their best month ever. I've already given the game away with that all the way through, because I keep saying, in theory, you know, New Zealand's just come out of lockdown. So we've got Ron Wesh over there and Viv Matthews. They're working as a team. And I just purely and simply said to them, is there any problem we have here that we can't solve with a quick 10 listings, or at least getting to 8 listings? Would that change the dynamic of everything positively for you? And of course it would. So we've got Viv focused heavily on the prospecting, still doing the presence marketing. They've just come out of lockdown. So we've got the newsletter going out. You know, we've got lots of leverage occurring off the listings and the sales that were made unconditional during that short or brief lockdown period. And they're focusing very, very heavily on an extensive APS list. I cannot advise any stronger than this, those of you in traction. Get yourself an exhaustive list of potential property sellers and make sure that your communication with them is thorough. It is not centric to you getting down there and focusing on a presentation. Make it centric to good, strong communication and the building of a professional relationship by providing them with information, giving them everything they need, making sure the passive contact is caught up, because the future arrives when it gets to those lockdown things being lifted. You'll be the first port of call because you've invested professionalism in them. And that, of course, is you've invested in caring for them. And again, to me, this is the most important thing. And, you know, hopefully I've got Nick Saperovic there. He's going great guns again. I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but, you know, he went from being okay, met me, we did great numbers. He's now come back into the fray, started with the agency between his 2 assistants. He's got a blue sales associate in Hannah Saperovic, same name, obviously his niece. And they're just working great guns. She's doing a great job. And he's got Liz, who's doing most of the red work in the background. And their functionality is sorted out right now. And I'm pleased to report that the number of sales that they're doing has them, well, in the top 1%. I mean, he's already in the middle of lockdown, making 4 sales a month. But we are looking to get that to around double figures in listings, which will naturally have double figure sales occurring off the back of that. So that's going great gun as well. Finally, with property marketer, so Prospector 4 is on the way. As soon as we are launching that, we'll be talking about it in here. But all of those people on the Sales Trainer Mentor program will be getting Prospector 4 and all its blazing glory on the back of Property Marketer. Lots of new techniques, lots of new little tools that you can use and to promote, to get sellers coming to you almost naturally and get that prospect flow in order. But the really big news, also the 2View platform's being improved, and so too is the market roundup. But the really big news is the reintroduction and the relaunch of Listing Pad in conjunction with strong listing. And can I just change it here? Instead of listing presentation, because I've always believed it's more about an education, listing education training, taking sellers and teaching them the right way to choose agents, teaching them how to create the right selection of agent, and then I believe where to see the value and then take a back seat inside the transaction, notwithstanding the fact that we then want to teach them to on refer you, that word gets out, that you build from 1 to 2 and 2 to 4 and so on. Again, this leverage thing is the most important thing. Now, I cannot begin to stress, if you're on the Sales Trainer Mentor, if you're a real estate salesperson listening to this, understand that the work has to be done in your service area around maintaining presence. You've got to be gauging this all the time. The moment you start to see a couple get under your guard, you then just have to make the assumption that we're losing a bit of footing, especially if you're not called in on the listing, that we are losing footing around being called in. So presence is dropping, because if you have presence out there, it's undeniable that you're going to be called in. All right, so let's move across to some of this training around, we call it prosperity, which of course is making sure that you're not just winning listings, but you're winning these listings on the terms and conditions of your choosing. And isn't it funny? You know, one of the people I want to mention, and he's on here and he might get all blushy at the moment, but this week I had young, when I say young rookie, young budding listing professional, sales professional out there doing listing presentations, Sean Donovan. And this week he's won a listing. I think it's being signed up in the next day or so, whatever it is. But here's the interesting part. And I'll say this unreservedly. I get people to, oops, I've just got a message, it's signed up. So we get this listing from another buyer from the sales inquiry log who was watching what was going on, comes in there, runs the presentation via Zoom. So we're in lockdown, can't go and meet with the owner, does the presentation online. Now, I've got to make this point very, very succinctly so that everyone understands. There's a lot that I talk about in terms of training over the last, I'd say 8 weeks to 12 weeks. Sean and I have spent the majority of our time working. Yes, we plan his week, we plan his prospecting, keep an eye on that, make sure the prospect flow is coming through. In fact, even when he mentioned this listing the other day and he was getting all excited, I said, hang on a second, mate, we've got planned for this month for you to get a minimum of 4 listings, more like 6, and we want to get to 8. Yep. I said, don't get sidetracked with this. Well, how many are we on right now? And it wasn't, I think this might be the first or the second, I don't know. But I just said, we've got a long way to go. Still keep focused on the present, still keep focused on the sales inquiry logs, still keep focused on getting those people on board. But isn't it funny when you take your focus away from trying to get them down to listing presentations and over pushing it, but just about focusing on the motive, remaining calm, that more opportunities come your way. You see, if you're not engaging these people, if you've been one of these salespeople that's actually looked at lockdown, thrown your hands in the air and said, this is the perfect time to take leave, and you're letting the momentum go of what you've done around prospecting and creating presence and all those other sorts of things, when this does come back, those that have been hammering away with these people and they then see the dust has cleared, they're going to look to those people that have talked them off the wall all the way through it. Those beams of positivity. there's two things that just don't change in and around the business of real estate sales. And I've said this on countless occasions. You can readily compensate for what you don't know in knowledge or what you don't have in skill with enthusiasm and unbridled confidence. And he might get embarrassed to hear me say this online in front of a lot of his peers, but I can tell you they're the two things that I've noticed that have escalated with Sean over the last 12 weeks. His enthusiasm has ramped up. I mean, he's so keen that he's actually going to be on the training next week for the people that I'm doing it in New Zealand, the listing presentation training, even though he has the same thing coming his way. So he's going to be online listening to that and participating in that at 7 a.m. in the morning, same as I am going to do. So that's the level of enthusiasm, hungry for it. Because that's the thing. If you get more and everything's going well, you just can't wait. You don't need a break. You don't need a holiday. You don't need time off. You just like, how do I keep going at this? So much so that there's going to be some salespeople that as soon as they realize that they've taken advantage of the opportunities that exist out there, some of them won't want the lockdown to end because they'll look at that as an advantage rather than a disadvantage. But here's the thing. Sean's understood that he's moved from, I see something, I hear something. And I've said this many, many times. It's enjoyable when we hear something new for the first time that we know that we can use, or we see some sort of technique for the first time. We go, wow, that's clever. I could use that. But the transition from seeing it to then, forget about knowing it, is only ever achieved with absolute repetition around going through that training over and over and over and over again ad nauseum. So many times I've said this, like you don't train for a marathon by going for one 40-kilometer run. It's a series of runs that you do each and every day as you build up. And yes, you've got to have rest periods and all those other bits and pieces in between. But it's all of the work that you do repetitively that leads to you being fit to run that marathon competitively. It's the same in terms of your professional capacity. It's your propensity to go through the monotony of repetitiveness of listening to something over and over and over again and rehearsing it over and over and over again to the point that you become professionally fit. And that's the final transition to moving from see or hear now to know now. Once you train it, now I know it. And then you move to the third phase, which is do now, that you are physically doing that which you learned. And this in turn is feeding your knowledge. This in turn is feeding your confidence. I implore you to embrace. Do not fall into the pattern of thinking I could never do that or it's too difficult. You know, I accept that you may not like the style with which I deliver it. That's my personal style, but the context remains the same. And you're only what I've had this happen so many times over the years, where people have mistakenly looked at some technique that I've used, nearly always around fees and charges. People love to get that dialogue from me. And they say, like, oh, it's amazing that you say that and how you thought of that and how this comes up quickly. They quite often mistake, to be honest with you, my repetitiveness. Yeah, they mistake, what they think is coming from me to be spontaneity. It's not spontaneity. It's the years and years of honing, training, and doing it to the point where I can reflexively respond this way. So I implore you to take that on board. Embrace the concept of a week in training. Yeah. A week in training. Yeah. Is a day saved in battle. Nearly all the time. So you see, these things will serve you at the most opportune moment. Okay, enough on that. Now let's just get to the subject matter of today. So I've had quite a few agents that have or struggled with, and this is an interesting one, because even that one that Sean listed that came to him the other day, the first thing he said to me was, I not only listed this, I listed it under the terms and conditions without any discount to fee. And he said, I actually went in at the higher rate. Now, I'd like to suggest something to you here right now, Sean. You didn't go in at the higher rate. You went in at the rack rate, because you need to have a rack rate. We don't want to create a scenario where we have higher fees and charges for some clients and lower ones for others. This, in a sense, is kind of nonsense too. I know you might be doing that by necessity, but your objective should be to mop that up too. And you need to accept that if you've got clients that are on different rates or varying degrees, that is not their fault, and that is not you serving them. That is not you customizing it towards them. That's you trying to be a slave to all masters, but you have an inconsistency in demonstrating your value proposition, or you are not connecting with clients that befit your product the way that you should. This is why I'm always saying that you need to have a prospecting regime that aims for a surplus of opportunities, more than you actually need, so that for you to run and identify the clients that you do need with that surplus, you end up in a prosperous situation because you've got the clients under the terms and conditions you're looking for. You see, I would much rather have, 5 clients, although I'd always err on the side of at least 10 to maybe more, but I'd rather have 10 clients all at 3% on fee, all investing, I should say, in the marketing, all compliant, than have 30 at 2%. Because that 30 is a whole lot of work to be in roughly the same disposition. And before you start going, hang on, that 30 is a lot more than 10, and you're only getting a third more, yeah. But those 10 are going to sell because I have control around them. Of those 30, a lot of them aren't going to sell, because if you've won them by offering a discount in the first place, you're going to have trouble getting them across the line, because that greed's going to transcend when they get to the offer point. Then they're going to push you even harder for even further discounts and everything else that falls into place. And here's another thing. I see the rise of agents starting to entertain the idea of creating concessions around marketing, or in some cases giving marketing away, or at the very least deferring any payment for marketing to the end of the transaction, and sometimes throwing part of that in to make the transaction fit together. Can I tell you, wherever I see any concessions granted around marketing investment, there is always fee discount, always fee discounting in there as well. So it is. I just want to work through some quick techniques just so that you understand. Please understand, we work in and around consignment selling. If there is any problem with you getting the seller to the point of negotiating fee, it's because you failed in a couple of areas. One is you are not representing value. But first and foremost, you have also not set up your fair fee regime to a level that you consider to be fair, and you have failed to make the decision to not discount fee. Now, this is always done better in concert if the whole team is participating in this. But you need to actually sit there and figure out what your fee is, where it needs to be, what's fair about that, how to jam pack that fee with a whole lot of value, and then work out how to make it, forget selling it, forget the concept of having to deal with objections, to deal with resistance. Instead, make it easy for people to buy. You know, it's like when people say to me straight up, they'll say, what do you charge? I say, well, I don't charge a fee at all. I earn it. These are just throwaway lines. There's a lot that goes behind that. Well, is your fee negotiable? Oh, no. We've set it at a level that's fair. I don't want any more than that. And they look at me and they say, what? And they might laugh, they might have a giggle. But why is it when people hear the word negotiation, they automatically assume discount? Negotiation can mean up. To me, as a negotiator, that's what it means. So I say to a seller, when they say, is your fee negotiable? I say, well, look, we've already preset it at 3% for your protection. Because if we were to negotiate it, I'm pretty good at this. I spend all day doing it. You could end up paying 4, 5, 6%. We don't want that, do we? And they just have a giggle and a laugh. Or if they identify your fee as being the highest, I see real estate agents around this scenario panic. Someone says, your fee's high, and they go, and agents go, start stuttering and get all defensive. Instead of being defensive, be proactive. So when I say my fee's 3%, and they look at me, I say, is that the highest you've heard? They go, yes. I say, good. For a second there, I thought that some other agent might have had the audaciousness to attempt to be higher. And they look at me and they're almost puzzled. I say, well, hang on a sec. What type of fee you think comes with the best agent, with the best salesperson? Would the best salesperson have a higher undiscounted fee, certainly at the point of listing? They go, yeah. So can we assume that the first sign of competency is a higher undiscounted fee? And conversely, can we also agree that the first sign of incompetency is a readily discounted fee? And the easier it is to discount, surely the less competent the salesperson. Because I only have one question for you, Mr. and Mrs. Owner. Who in their right mind would discount a fee that didn't have to? And I kind of suspect a rat. You're telling me that the other agents are telling you that they're going to get a fabulous price for the property. Yes, if they truly believed that, if they knew for sure they were going to get you a price that's going to blow you away, why on earth would they be discounting the fee if they knew that you were going to get the maximum amount? Surely they would see that as an opportunity to get the maximum rate. Can you see where this is going, people? And so often I see agents not understanding how to attack this. So this is the premise by which we'll be setting up inside the listing training, so that when you go in there, you are already prepared around your value proposition. You already know the things that you must do and say to get this seller on side. Fixed fee agents, these ones just crack me up. You know, where you see agents that are out there saying, we have a fixed fee, let's say of $10,000, and the next agent might be 15. So on average, your fee's 15, but it could be as high as 20, depending on the value of the property. And I see agents getting really concerned about this. And I see nonsense statements being made by these discount agents. They say things like, because we don't have an office, we don't have this, we don't have all the other things that agency down the road does, we have economies of sales, we don't have the same expenses, therefore we can offer the service for a fixed fee of $10,000. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're talking to a client and they serve you up a plate of bullshit, you need to say, that's bullshit, and I'm not going to eat it. And if it's okay with you, can I show you that it's bullshit just in case you decide to eat it? They go, what on earth? I mean, what on earth? How on earth are they telling you that their expenses are less? That's just complete not a bullshit. Did this person that said to you, did they own the business? Do they own the company? Are they in control of the expenses? No, they've just been told that bullshit, because that's what it is. Here's the harsh reality. Here's the harsh reality of a fixed fee agent. If they're at 10,000, your average fee is 20. They have to sell twice the amount of properties that you do to be in the same position. So here's the thing. During the transaction, when it comes to the point of sale, amidst the middle of a negotiation, when they're getting to a point where they think the buyer's kind of exhausted, are they then saying, hang on, we have to vie for the quality of this transaction for our client, or are they just transactional and saying this just needs to get across the line? Do you think behind your back they're saying, what's wrong with this bloke? What do they want for $10,000? That's exactly what they're going to say, because they are pressured to get a number of sales across the line to survive. So you've actually incentivized desperation. You've incentivized them to compromise. You've created an incentive for them to compromise your disposition. You see, it's just an education. You have to pause and walk through the literal understanding. Now, I say to a seller openly around fees, look, goodness me, people, so many people like yourselves that are selling are concerned about the fee being negotiable. But I know I made a joke about it just a second ago when I said I don't want any more, but here's the point. In fact, here's the truth. The fee's negotiable for the life of the listing. You see, you're in control, because until such time as you approve of what you're going to receive, I don't get paid. And you are at liberty at any time during the transaction to say, Mark, I would run with that, but I'll only pay X amount of dollars. All I want is the opportunity, I believe, to afford you to see that I've actually demonstrated that value. So you're always in control. And I can't see how you could possibly get a better deal, because I don't get paid until you're happy with what you get. At this point, all you are setting up is the incentive to sell the property. Now, beyond that, I've also had people say, you know, with marketing, isn't the advertising inclusive? I said, well, look, that's a legitimate question. And do you need to advertise the property to sell it? No. I've got to say this so that we get it. The reason that sellers come to real estate agents in the first place is because they run on the assumption that we have buyers. So for you to then turn around when you get there in a listing presentation and say, can you give me some money so I can go and get some buyers, it's just a complete nonsense. And we have to shy away from this notion. We have to concede that selling a property is the easy part. I can tell you right now, it's easy to find a buyer. It is difficult to get a buyer to their maximum perception of value and then get them to part with the maximum amount of money. This is what a professional does. This enables me to say to a seller, by comparison to you, my job is to earn my fee. I aim to get or secure a number for this property that is at least the value of my fee more than you could get. That way you get me for nothing. If you're clever enough to identify the best salesperson, you've just made the most economical choice, because in the business that I operate in, the best is typically the cheapest, so long as their fee is fair and reasonable. And let's face it, the percentage differences that you are talking are marginal when you compare it to the outcome. Please focus on the big number, which is the one that you receive, and not the little number. But also understand that you are always in control. And in any event, it's my job to show you what marketing is. The investment I'm asking you to make fundamentally is in the perception of the property. Now, there are some things that you can do that only require the investment of elbow grease. But there are some things that I would ask you to make that investment, because after the buyer's found, we need to maximize their perception of the property. And this can be anything from visual presentation to other perceptions, you know, and just even just the way they look at whether or not somebody else wants the property. I mean, the quickest way to sell someone something is to tell them they can't have it. And this might sound funny to you, but over the years, I've had experiences where I've turned up to a property that doesn't have a for sale sign on it. And the buyer has looked at me and said, why doesn't this have a for sale sign? And there might be some legitimate reason, but all of a sudden the buyer feels kind of secure in the fact that it's not being promoted, if they're interested in it, of course, because there's no sign on it. So it's just something as simple as that. If you don't have the right signage, if you're not shouting it from the rooftops, this can devalue the property because the buyer feels secure that nobody else wants it. But if they perceive that somebody else wants it, then all of a sudden they're willing to part with their maximum amount of money. So all of this needs to be taught to a seller so that they come to you under the right terms and conditions. So again, I encourage you, those of you that are listening today and want to get involved in the listing presentation training from next Friday, bearing in mind it will be Australian Eastern Standard Time at 7 a.m. Please send me an email and I'll hook you up with that. Those of you that are in the STM, the Sales Trainer Mentor Program, of course, there's no charge, nothing. Just let me know and you can jump on aboard with that. Or you can wait for us to do something for the East Coast people. Those of you that Hill and Materi will be doing it is specifically for you. I just have to talk to the sales team leader there, Sebastian, to make sure that he's okay with me using their listing pad in that training. And if you guys want to come along, you're welcome to come along. Anyone that wants to join us there for that East Coast time slot. Those of you in Perth, I'm sure you don't want to jump on board with the New Zealand stuff. That for you would be 5 a.m. in the morning, probably a bit early. But do let me know. So you can just contact me, Mark with a K at salestrainer.com.au, or you can telephone +61 410 592 165. And I hope you've enjoyed today's, well, it's almost like a bit of a show, but we'll always make sure that you got takeaways that you can bring out there to the field at almost any time, keep you abreast of what's happening in the market in real time, and ensure that you are listing and selling to your full capacity. I look forward to catching you guys next week.